I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get just by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk. Gotta keep quiet, maneuver in silence, to let them in, chalk up their body, another one body, that's just how it go. I got some secrets.
Hello and welcome to JK+1. I am not your host, PTF. He's at home trying to fix his Wi-Fi. He was yelling at me all morning about his Wi-Fi not working, and telling me that he's got this booster. He doesn't know what to do. I'm gonna have to help him, I think. I am your host, Jonathan Kinchin, and we didn't have a choice. We had to take a week off. The sale on Monday night. I usually record these on Tuesday, and full disclosure, it's just I barely could get out of bed on Tuesday, so there's no way I was going to be able to record a podcast. Not to mention, everyone in racing also was likely in the same predicament that I found myself in. So who was I going to talk to? I couldn't talk. There was no one to talk to, so we decided to take a week off. We're back at it again, and I caught up with my friend Jack Sisterson. A lot of fun. It's a lot of times with these situations is you become friendly with people, but then you don't really get their full story. And I had no idea a lot of things about Jack. The how he met Doug O'Neill to become his assistant, we talk about, which is hilarious. I had no idea that he was a college athlete here in the U.S. These are all things that I wasn't aware of, and so we had a bunch of fun talking. And his True Timber story with Kendrick, you'll also enjoy. That's coming up. Want to remind everyone, our friends at Qatar Racing. This wouldn't be possible without Sheikh Fahad and the team at Qatar Racing. Ever so mischievous. I don't remember that we haven't talked since that. Ever so mischievous. I've been telling you from the start, they had let us know that they liked Ever so mischievous, and then he had a couple of good races, and then he got the job done here at Saratoga, and with Tyler Gaffalione. And so we want to say congratulations to our friends at Qatar Racing, and I'm sure they've got a ton more to offer throughout the rest of the meet. I think Sheikh Fahad is off to France to the sale to Arcon to buy some more horses. So best of luck to them in their bidding as well. Follow, subscribe, retweet, tweet, comments. You know all the things. It's helpful for us here at In the Money Media, JK+1, and like I said, our friends at Qatar Racing. All right, let's get into it. Here's my friend, Jack Sisterson. Jack, what's going on?
Hey, Jonathan, everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just I'm in the middle of that, and I'm sure you've experienced it at Del Mar and also here at Saratoga. I'm in the middle of that kind of like, okay, I've been waiting 46 weeks for this to come up. The first 4 weeks, I go 22 and change right out of the gate, going 1.25 miles, and then I just have to kind of pull up a little bit because I wear myself out with the social aspect of Del Mar and Saratoga.
Oh, 100%. I think once you get through the sales week, it's so you can take a deep kind of, it's finally maybe midsummer. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's so much more to look forward to, isn't there?
That's the tricky part. Like, I don't want it to be over, but like, man, it takes its toll on you.
It does, but there's so much excitement going around, and obviously the sales just finishing, and all the big consigners coming up, and the big owners, and such a buzz around the whole sales ground, and that's what racing should be like, shouldn't it? And
yeah, for sure.
the guys are all flying to Deauville tonight, and that's going to be a fun sale for them, and they come back, and there's so much more racing to look forward to. But like you said, it's like, God, when does it ever end? It's tiresome, but it's enjoyable at the same time.
Did you get anything done at the New York bred sale?
No, we didn't. What we're trying to create, our business model at the moment, is proven horses. Yearlings is great, but you don't see them for a full year. So we try to focus at the moment, kind of bringing horses over from Europe. They do well on the grass here, and as we grow and move forward, we'll dive into the yearling market. But there's a time and a place for that in the near future.
Jack, I think most people, we'll get into your time as an assistant with Doug O'Neill, but I think as of late, recently, people knew you, and a lot of your grade one success has come as a private trainer for Calumet. You've since kind of opened up to having horses for other people. How did the Calumet thing get started in the first place?
God, again, it's a very humbling position I was put in because, you see the history or read the history behind the Calumet farm and, coming over from England, I just read, the success of farms like that. And I was approached by them and jumped at that opportunity. And I'm forever in debt to Calumet because that was a massive stepping stone for me in my career to get going because there's so much involved in getting started and knowing the right people. And I think the biggest thing, I'd say 99% of the trainers would agree with me, would be a financial aspect of getting started as well. And Calumet supported me, and here we are chatting now, and we've had a little success together, and hopefully there's more to come.
What was kind of in your decision? Was it always kind of a plan, or what was in your decision to kind of open back up to be public, to have horses for other operations just outside of Calumet?
I think, as we had a little success, we were getting approached by other owners if we could have one or two outside horses for other people. And we sat down as a farm and thought, the right move would be to try and grow myself. And that's how we kind of ultimately came around to do that. And, it's going great so far. And, we look forward to the future. It's a lot of exciting things happening. So, but again, look back and, excuse me, I'll be forever in debt to Calumet for that stepping stone to get me to where I am now.
So I've seen a couple of things, and you originally in the game you wanted to be a jockey. Like, was your family overly involved? How did that come about?
I remember just going to the races at a young age, more so jumping, Jonathan, back home. I loved the jumping, and I just watch. I wake up, every Saturday morning, watch the morning line show, and I've got good friends back there that are involved, and started riding at somewhat of a young age, but I was a bad rider. I was pretty small growing up, so I thought, oh, you know what, I'd love to be a jockey, and that dream kind of shattered when I started to grow. But I was somewhat better at soccer than riding, and soccer kind of took over from there, and went to the University of Louisville on a soccer scholarship.
I didn't know that until I usually do like a little bit of research before I jump on with someone just to make sure I don't miss anything good. I had no idea that. In fact, when I first Googled your name, it said like Jack Sisterson, Louisville soccer. I was like, oh, that's funny. There's another Jack Sisterson. And then I clicked on it and I saw the picture from 2006. So was it strategic to go to Louisville to play soccer because you knew you could do the equine business program too? Or was that kind of secondary? How did all that work?
100%. Yeah. When I flew to Louisville on an official visit, I didn't know, Jonathan, that Churchill Downs was right basically in the campus. And I wasn't so much good at school, but wanted to get some sort of an education, and getting an education in something that I loved and wanted to career. And it was a no-brainer for me, and playing soccer at the same time. It was really, I lived an American dream, and I look back now and the connections I've met and, the places I've seen. We used to fly all over America, and I couldn't have, been able to afford that just kind of growing up. And it was brilliant, Jonathan. The experiences we had, and the teammates and the friends, and still to this day that, I have a lot of friends all over America that we played soccer, went to school with. And it was actually my first introduction into American racing was 2007 through Gary Stevens, who was best friends with Michael McCarthy, aka Whitey, who was Todd's assistant at Churchill at the time. So I contacted Gary. Said, Gary, I really want to get into racing in America, but I've got 4 years of school left. He said, meet me at Churchill Downs at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm thinking 5 o'clock, that's a bit early. He said, meet me there at the front gate, jump in my car, I'll drive you back to a barn, and I'll get you a job. Met him at 5 o'clock. went to Todd Pletcher's barn, met Michael, started hot walking for Todd. That was the year that Rags to Riches won. He had 5 in the Kentucky Derby. I think was Circular Key the favourite. I can't remember. Street Sense won it that year, but Curlin ran, Hard Spun, Scat Daddy, and it was just an incredible introduction for me at a young age, wanting a career, getting an introduction to somebody like Todd Pletcher that basically runs his operation like a Fortune 500 company. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do.
Did you, so I guess, were you a freshman at that point or how?
I was a sophomore, junior. No, I was a sophomore, Jonathan, and didn't have a car. I used to walk from my dorm room on 4th Street all the way down. I woke up at 3 o'clock, didn't have money to buy a car, walked to work, came back. They let me leave sort of an hour-ish early to go work out during summer school, and then I'd walk back to Churchill.
Oh my God. So you would get up in the morning, go to the track, hot walk, go to soccer practice or summer school or whatever, and then you'd go back in the afternoons?
Go back, yeah. And it was a dream come true, John. I mean, the horses, I think English Channel was there at the time, and looking back now that working for Calumet, I've had a lot of English Channels to train, and never in a million years would I've expected to be in that position, walking to work, kind of paycheck to paycheck, to, to grow. And I think it just goes to show if you put your head down and work and be around the right type of people, opportunities do arise.
Did you just randomly reach out to Gary, or how did you?
No, I met Gary. I think, through Jill Byrne, who was working. I knew Pat Byrne at the time, and met Gary through Jill Byrne. And to the day, Gary and I are close, and we chat. And I actually saw Gary yesterday afternoon. But we'll always look back and say, "Do you remember this?" And it was, I mean, a long time ago, but brilliant times, Jonathan. It was just, for me, you look at the size of England, which is probably the size of a smaller state in America, to be living in this massive country with all these opportunities. It's really a dream come true.
How long did you do? How long did you do that? The hot walking for Todd, soccer, hot walking for Todd.
I graduated 4 years at Louisville. The reason being is because I stayed and did summer school there. I struggled during school. I wasn't the smartest, but we got it done somehow. I think through the athletic department, they provided some pretty smart tutors that would help us along the way. Somehow got that done. And then after that, made my way out to California. And that was another, unbelievable experience being out there. That completely different world, as you know, but so fun, so energetic, so expensive, but you live and learn, don't you? So yeah, we've had a fun road to get to where we are now.
So the soccer thing, I think, is interesting. Did you? What position did you play?
Everywhere. Growing up, I wanted to be centre forward, but I could never score, and then midfield, but I wasn't fit enough. So I was as I grew, I was sort of centre half, and I was kind of that slow person that would just jump up for headers and things like that. So never want to be a goalkeeper though. That was the only thing. If you were the goalkeeper at a young age, you're like, oh, this kid's too useless to do anything. So I never wanted to do that.
Did you play? Did you play a lot? I mean, how did you start it all at Louisville? Like how many years did you start at Louisville?
For 4 years. Actually, I've redshirted my first year, and then my last year, I actually couldn't play because I had 2 knee operations. And you'd laugh at this. I was introduced to the football team and went over there and tried to kick my last year, and it was pretty fun doing that. The sport itself, I'm talking about American football here, is such an unbelievable sport that so much is put into that I could sit here for hours and explain the attention to detail of that sport, which growing up in England, you just put on the TV and you think there's about 25 men running around the field just chasing after each other. But uh, yeah, we tried to do that, and it was unbelievable, really. They were going the season that I couldn't play soccer, and I went over to the football team. They were, I think, ranked first or second in the country.
Was it when
Kind of
was that when I'm trying to remember who was there then? I remember
Brian
when they
Brum
had a
was
nice little run.
yeah, Brian Brum was the quarterback
Yes,
at the
yes,
time,
yes.
and Coach Craig Thorpe was the coach. But then things changed, and didn't have a successful season. And but they've a great athletic program at Louisville. I met Coach Patino when he was there for basketball, and actually trained for him now, which we look back now and laugh that he found out at the time when I was hot walking for Todd. Someone told him, he said, there's a soccer player that's hot walking at Churchill Downs. He said, who is it? He said, a guy called Jack Sisterson. So Coach Patino contacted the soccer coach. He said, do you mind if you have Jack come over and chat to me? And I didn't know how big basketball was. Didn't have a clue about basketball. Still don't have a clue about basketball, but it's massive. And he's one of the successful basketball coaches. So here I am trundling over to this unbelievable arena. I sit down, and quite intimidating man. And Jack, I said, yes, coach. He said, can you do me a favor? I said, yeah, of course, coach. He said, do not give any of my basketball players any tips. And I looked at him and he said, that's it. And I said, that's it? He said, yes. And I had to walk out. And that was it. And we look back now and we laugh about it. And he still kind of jokes around. He said, don't give them any tips. So,
Oh my God.
no, it was an unbelievable 4 years at school, and the people I met along the way, and still love to go back. That Kentucky Derby week, as you know better than anyone, is such a fun week to go back, and the excitement, and it's just added bit of fun for me, and my teammates. We all meet up that week, and just because we had so much fun the 4 years of being at school there.
Yeah, it's a nice little homecoming for you. So you graduate, and then how did you? Was Doug your first job in California, or did you go to California and then find Doug?
Went to California, then found Doug, and it was so random how I met Doug, because I was at Santa Anita and Hollywood Park at the time was open, and I was looking for a place to rent out there, and it was intimidating looking at the prices, and I sort of Googled rentals in kind of the West Side area, which Santa Monica, places like that, and couldn't really afford anything. And the first thing that came up on the Google search was a place called West Side Rentals. So clicked on that and looked at all these listings, blah, 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 and then went to Hollywood Park. I think it was when bike racing was at Hollywood Park, and the horses were walking around the paddock, and the jockeys come out the jocks room, and it might have been Tyler Bays or somebody. I can't remember exactly what jockey it was, but he had a red set of silks on with West Side Rentals. I was like, wait a minute, that's the listing website that I've just been looking on for rentals. So this jockey walks out and walks up to Doug, and Doug's chatting, and typical Doug, fist pumping. And this is the first image I had of Doug, and still to this day, the first time I see that he'll fist pump anybody. And I'm like, God, I wonder what connection Doug has with West Side Rentals, the listing website. So I went back home and looked it up, and Mark Verge owned West Side Rentals, owned Horses with Doug, was Doug's best friend at high school growing up. So I reached out to Mark, not necessarily for a job, but for a rental. It's like, hey, I'm stuck. I need a rental, blah, blah, blah. I can't really afford something in Santa Monica. I sent an email to his info@westsiderentals.com. 2 seconds later, I get a phone call. Hey, Jack, it's Mark Verge. Can you come to my office in Santa Monica? I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Drove over there. I had no interest in talking about rentals. He said, do you like horses? I said, I love horses, blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. He introduced me to Doug. I started working for Doug in 2011. My first time at Hollywood Park was when I'll Have Another one, first time out going 4.5 furlongs with Joel Rosario riding, and then got to travel with him, with Nyquist, with Golden Sense. And to this day that we all look back and laugh, said, how funny was it how I met Doug through Mark looking for a rental place in in Santa Monica. That's how I met Doug.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you just like, someone through Todd and and you met and you went out
No,
there and
no, it was simply through a website and going racing and seeing. It was just all came, it was a timing thing as well. I was looking for a place. I'd just been on that West Side Rentals website, and then the jockey walks out with the silks on West Side Rentals, walks up to Doug. I was like, oh, I wonder what connection they have, and went back on the website, and Mark Verge introduced me to Doug, and we spent some great years together, and learned a lot from Doug. And the horses that I was able to travel with, Jonathan, at a young age was unbelievable. It started with I'll Have Another, and that was so fun, winning the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and unfortunately what happened in the Belmont. But Doug, the Reddens, is such a big supporter of the sport. They all sat us down at Belmont at the time and said, guys, if someone would have said to you, going into this trip, we're going to win the Kentucky Derby, would we have took it? Everybody said yes. So he said, let's be grateful for what happened, not what could have happened.
well, especially for you, right? It's like when you're coming up in your career and you've got this Derby winner that you've got to help be a part of, and you've got this Preakness winner. I mean, I would think, especially because at a young age too. I mean, I also think that like through life and through experience and through loss, and I mean, even death of family members and death of friends, and it kind of puts things into perspective as you go through life. So when you have the disappointment that you guys had with I'll Have Another, a couple of days before the Belmont going for a Triple Crown, I feel like an older person can handle that better. Do you remember? I mean, do you remember how you handled it? Do you remember where you were when you got the news? What were your thoughts? What are your memories of that moment?
Well, gut wrenching to the immediate feeling was, you try to describe it. It's kind of words can't describe the feeling because you're on such a high and then such a low at the same time. You feel for the grooms and the guys that really spend the 24/7 with the likes of I'll Have Another, and there was so much excitement because when was the last time a potentially Triple Crown winner was? It would have been before, obviously. I'll Have Another was
Must have been Big
uh,
Brown. Must have been the last time, which was 2008.
yeah,
So that was what I'll Have Another was 2012. So there was a little bit of a
12,
4-year gap. But even before Big Brown, I feel like it was a while.
right? And I think he was 4 to 5 morning line. So you'd think you're 4 to 5 in a race, you should be winning, and there was so much buzz going around the town that you look at the name I'll Have Another, and everybody loved the name. I mean, you probably drank too much because of I'll Have Another. Every restaurant you went to, someone would shout, I'll have another, and send a drink over to you. Okay, I'll have another. I'll have another. So the whole Triple Crown thing, the name I'll Have Another was said quite a few times. But now going back to your question, Jonathan, when Doug sat us down and said, the right thing for the horse is not to run. We didn't know what to say, to be honest. You get so far and you're so close, and it's right there at your fingertips. And you say, surely this can't happen. But thanks to Doug and the Redhams, they had to do what's best for the horse, and they did. And, I think Union Rags won it that year.
Yep.
And the Redhams had bought all the tickets for, and I can't explain how good owners the Redhams were throughout the whole thing of taking care of the staff, because they had tickets, they had dinners, they paid for everything. There wasn't anything that they did not provide throughout that whole trip. And from the outside person looking in, people might just say, well, you just wake up and go to the barn. We had drivers set up, we had accommodation at each, Louisville, Baltimore, New York, the best of the best. And I remember the Redhams sitting down and said, guys, it isn't meant to be for us, but there's X amount of horses still to compete in that Belmont Stakes this afternoon. Let's all go over there and support them and celebrate what I'll Have Another's done. And we went racing that afternoon and had a great time. And, we tried to look back at the positive, not the negative. And so much fun, John. It was unbelievable. And we got back home, and you paraded I'll Have Another, and you were proud of his accomplishments. And it just makes you've experienced that at that level. That's all you want. It's like flying first class. Once you're in first class and you go back to the bus, you're like, well, what's the point in that? I want to be at the highest level now. And it's the reason we wake up 7 days a week, 3 o'clock every morning, for that potential dream to be in that spot. And it might never happen, but guess what? We do it because we love it, and it's that dream at stake that keeps us going.
Jack, remind me, I'm sure that's written somewhere, but we're far enough away. Remind me what the issue was. What was the issue with I'll Have Another? And you say it as if you kind of hinted to it as if Doug really wanted to persevere, that it wouldn't have been outside the realm of possibility.
He could have ran. I'd say 99% of the horses, could have ran, and he had a small little profile on his tendon. To take a risk at the highest level with so much involved and so much media and things like that, Doug couldn't take the chance, and he was retired just because of that. It was a very minor thing, but at that sort of level and at that sort of caliber of horse, they did the right thing.
And then, you fast forward a couple of years, and funny. Let me back up before we go to Nyquist. And I plan to have Doug on this one time, and at some point, and I'll tell him this story too. And I told him privately, but it's a funny story with I'll Have Another. In 2012, my first Derby I ever went to was 2009. It's the first Derby I went to. Mind That Bird won. It was my friend and Robert Chow and I. We went, and that was a year. We were broke, and we stayed at an extended stay hotel, because for a week you could get a hotel for $180, but we just left. Basically, we just left early, and it was like one of the scariest places I ever stayed. And then 2 years after that, one of the years we stayed we rented an apartment from a Louisville student and slept in a twin size bed. We shared a twin size bed, like feet to head. Him and I did just, and then the first year that we ever stayed at the Galt House was the year that I'll Have Another one. And I remember, just a huge fan at the time. I had no involvement in anything, just a huge fan of racing. And I saw Doug, and I remember getting up the courage to go up to him and tell him good luck. But after I shook his hand and said good luck, I was like, oh, why did I tell him good luck? I don't want I'll Have Another to win. I like Bodymeister. And now I've given this man good luck, but I wanted to shake his hand. And so I told him the story that when he beat me, I blamed myself for running down Bodymeister in the stretch.
That's funny that, that was the biggest worry going into the Preakness, with the cutback in distance, and Bodymeister obviously getting a loose lead, kind of how it played out in the Preakness. How would I'll Have Another overcome that? And I've kind of, when I sit around and have a couple of minutes, I always sort of go on YouTube and watch that stretch run of I'll Have Another and Bodymouth. It's pretty exciting watching. Those are the types of, the stretch deals that you want in those types of races that it makes it so exciting for the public, doesn't it?
Oh, I thought for sure I was, and still now, even though I'm significantly more well seasoned and I've seen more things and I have more experience and I'm a better handicapper and horse player than I was in 2012. I still would play Bodymeister in the
For
Preakness
sure,
based
yeah.
off of what happened in the Derby, and that's why it's still so impressive to me how
I
well
agree.
I'll Have Another ran that day.
I should know this, but I'll have an. Was he favourite for the Preakness or was it Bodymeister might have
I
been?
think
Vic,
so. I have it right here in front of me. I'll Have
yeah.
Another was 3-1, and Bodymeister. I mean, it has to be. Bodymeister was. It's coming. He was. Yeah, he was like 2-1, a little bit less than 2-1.
Yeah.
He was like 8-5, 7-6-5,
Yes.
8-5.
So going, yeah, I think a lot of the public had obviously picked Bodymeister because of the speed and him cutting back in trip. So, thankfully, the result worked out
Absolutely.
our way, but it was fun. It's always fun to go to Baltimore, isn't it?
I actually went last year. Was my first Preakness I'd ever gone to, but I did enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. It's a cool. It's hard as hell to get out of there after the races, but Nyquist,
Now, when
you
you
were. Go ahead.
go back to
No. You got it. What are you gonna say?
your first Kentucky Derby. Did you have the all button that year when Mind That Bird won or not?
Oh my God, absolutely
Surely
not.
you hit the all button. Oh, come
No.
on.
Who did I bet? I don't even remember who I bet that year. It wasn't Pioneer of the Nile. Maybe it was Musket Man is who I ended up playing. But no, I didn't have the all button at all. And it's like, and it's weird too, because like it's just like the Derby, when you lose the Derby as a horse player, there's all this buildup for 6 months. It really takes the wind out of your sails. And when a horse like that wins, it makes it even worse. You're like, why did I spend 7 months caring about this day and this race, and then Mind That Bird beats me, and I got to go back to this extended stay hotel where I'm probably going to get kidnapped. It was
I know, but from actually a horse, but it's probably quite hard going all in the Kentucky Derby because it'd be so expensive, wouldn't it?
yeah, and it kind of defeats the purpose of like it being such a great
Yeah,
situation.
exactly.
And we
Yeah,
also know that there's 10 horses that can't win.
right.
And yes, I say that. And since 2008, since I've paid a lot of attention, there has been 2 of those horses that I said can't win that did, Rich Strike and Mind That Bird. But the rest of them that have won, they've all made a level of sense. Even the big price one,
For sure,
the 15, even I'll Have Another made sense.
yeah.
Even Animal Kingdom made sense.
Yeah,
They make sense. It's just those 2 horses made 0 sense.
yeah. I think Animal Kingdom when he won, he was kind of the buzz horse of how well he was training around the backside going into the race.
Yep. That was one of those deals where I remember Graham worked him on the dirt, and it was like, that was when I started to really realize that when people say whoever works the best leading up to the Derby usually runs well, he was like one of those main examples, and he did. He ran outstanding that day.
Yeah, he did.
What a good horse he was.
For sure, yeah, he was.
Did he? No, was he? Yeah, he did. Did Oxbow? No, that was Shackelford. Shackelford beat him. Oxbow was later. Were you?
Yeah, Oxbow beat Golden Sense in the Preakness.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of full circle for you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I know. It's funny that Golden Sense was such a fast horse. He's weird. If you took him back, he'd no interest. He just wouldn't be comfortable. You put him on the lead, like when he won those 2 Breeders' Cup miles, he goes fast as he could as far as he could, and kind of hung on. The instructions were he was supposed to make the lead in the Preakness. Guess who won? Gary Stevens and Oxbow went wire to wire and beat Golden Sense. So it's kind of funny looking back at how it all works out.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then obviously the connection with Oxbow and Calumet, who you obviously trained for. Did you think Golden Sense had a chance in that Kentucky Derby, or were you
Oh,
concerned about the
100%.
distance?
The distance in the Kentucky Derby, and there's such a big field, and him making the lead, when you break, it's kind of, you got to find your trip and going into that first turn, and he didn't, and he just wasn't a comfortable horse if he didn't make the lead. And if you go back and look at all his good races, which obviously was the Breeders' Cup Mile, he went wire to wire and went fast, and you know, why take speed out of a horse when he has it? And, Doug noticed that pretty quick and utilized the speed in the Breeders' Cup Miles, and they were pretty impressive wins.
Yeah, I mean, even his Met Mile when he lost to Palace Malice was outstanding.
Yeah, exactly. It was. It was. And when he broke his win at Delmar, that he was such a fun horse to be around. I remember at Hollywood Park, he was working on the synthetic track there, and I wasn't there, but I was maybe at Santa Anita, and Doug called after training one day, just chatting about things. He said, "God, we've got that at the time. We've got this colt by Into Mischief, and Into Mischief stood for like $5,000. And Golden Sense, he was out of a banker's gold mare, didn't really have much pedigree. Dennis bought him for 62, June OBS, and he said, God, that's the best work I've seen since Stevie Wonderboy won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I said, what was? He said, God, this 2-year-old colt by Into Mischief. It was incredible. I think we're going to have some fun with him moving forward. So the whole summer, he ran towards the end of Delmar, but you know how it goes when horses work out the gate and the gate crew sees and the clocker sees. This was the most anticipated horse to debut at Delmar. And sure enough, when he won, he got a TDM Rising Star. Kevin Krieger rode him, and this is how much Doug thought of Golden Sense. He put him on a plane and sent him over to run in the Champagne, and was second to Shanghai Bobby, who was probably more seasoned at the time. Golden Sense went from 5.5 at Delmar to Belmont. There's a lot to ask of him, but ran a really good second, and then they skipped the Breeders' Cup that year to opt to go to the Delta Jackpot, which was $1 million, and he won that. And such an incredibly fast horse, Jonathan. Probably one of the fastest horses, naturally fastest horses I've ever been around. He was just a pure athlete. You get fast horses and over a certain distance, but he could carry his speed over that mile, and he was a fun horse to be around.
Did you guys all along know? Were you high on Nyquist all along? Because I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, I just felt like he kind of was never overly flashy, but he just kept winning
Never.
races.
So Dennis bought him from the Miami sale at the time and paid 300 or 400 for him. And the first day he got off the van at Santa Anita, it was beautiful, athletic, great mind to him. He walked into the barn with, say, 3, 4, 5 other 2-year-olds. The 2-year-olds, they get a bit starstruck seeing things for the first time. This horse dropped his head, lengthened his walked into that barn like he owned the place. And he had that presence from day one. And I remember walking him down to the track. I was on the pony, Johnny Gossey, who galloped him every day, took him to the track, went around. I forget what he did the first day of training, might have jogged 2 or something like that. And he said, God, this horse has got such a good mind. And as we picked up his training, nothing fazed him. I mean, you could put a bomb off in front of him. He'd just stand there and say, is that it? And I remember him debuting at Santa Anita, and Pete Miller had, he had a 2-year-old that was a good first time out that was, I think, odds on. Must go back and look at that. And I want to say Nyquist drew the rail. It was definitely inside of the Pete Miller, which, as you know,
Yep.
probably getting pressure down on the rail, being a 2-year-old, you usually back out of there. And he kept going for, like at the quarter pole, we got, okay, it's time for him to back out. And he kept going forward and kept fighting, and bam, he won. I think the time was like 56 and let me, I don't want to,
56.43.
yeah. So I'm like, wow, that's a pretty fast time. And, you know, potentially we might have something here. And, you know, been a son of Uncle Mo, and he's by the right stallion and looked the part. And Doug and the Redhams managed him brilliantly to get to be, you know, champion 2-year-old. And, you know, you go forward and winning the Kentucky Derby. But like you said, he was never flashy, Jonathan. Even in his works in the morning, you know, he just only do enough to please, if that makes sense. He wasn't
Yep.
going to run off and break his maiden by 10 that Golden Sense did. He just did enough to get by. And probably was he a little underrated or not? I can't really. What price was he in the juvenile? I remember at
He
Keenan,
was
he was
four.
out.
He was 9-2. But the thing about it
Um,
is like, you know, we have some. I was talking to a friend, have some good notes. That was there negative info about him leading up to the juvenile? Was he like training funny? Something happened? Like, I feel like there was like a buzz about him that wasn't like a positive buzz that might have got people off. I don't remember what it
you know
was.
what's funny that I was on the pony on the back, like waiting for him as he pulled up, you know, galloping, and he kind of took a funny step, and as horses do. And Nyquist took a funny step. And then it rained one day, and we took him down to the training track at Keeneland. Everyone's like, oh, guess what? Nyquist took a funny step, and he's not training today. But we went down to because it was a pretty rainy week, I believe, leading up to the Breeders' Cup in Lexington. So kind of that was the buzz going around there. And no, he was a sound horse the majority of the time. You know, because he won at the juvenile after that race. I think it was announced that Darley had bought him after the juvenile. They kind of wanted to map out a 3-year-old campaign for him. Obviously, the Kentucky Derby worked back, and you know, people want to get 2, 3. I don't know how many preps trainers prefer to get into a Kentucky Derby horse, but because of the success Doug had with I'll Have Another and the Redhams, Doug asked, can I just put 2 preps in him? Because he was bought at the Miami sale, Gulfstream offered a bonus if a horse was sold out of that Miami sale and won the Florida Derby. You were entitled to a bonus, and they kind of said, well, let's get a prep in for the Florida Derby, and if he was to win that, let's send him back to Keenan because he did so well, and Keenan's such a beautiful place to train a horse from. Let's train him there for 5 weeks and lead him over to Churchill. Didn't go to Churchill until the week of the race, and did all his main work at Keenan leading up to the Kentucky Derby.
God, and just looking at his past performances, you know, he had that San Vicente was fast, then the Florida Derby, and then he had the time to the Derby, ran fast. And then do you think it was the racetrack at the Preakness that cost him?
He went so quick. And how fast I forget, there was another was it Uncle Lino or Uncle, what? They were a Gary Sherlock horse, I think. Let me have a look.
I'm getting it. 2016 Preakness Stakes. Let's see who was in there. I know it's
They
set
were
up.
flying up front.
Let's see.
Was it
It would
Uncle
have
something?
been Uncle Lino. Yep.
Yeah.
Uncle Lino.
They
Trying to
and
see
how
the
fast?
fractions.
What was?
I don't see the fractions to the final time where I'm looking on Wikipedia.
Yeah, they kind of dueled up front, and I don't necessarily think it was the track that got him beat. It was how quick he went early,
Yeah.
and you know he got sick. We couldn't ship him up to Belmont. He got sick. We pulled the blood, and you know I actually stayed at Pimlico with him for a few weeks until we could fly him back to California. And after that, Jonathan, he wasn't the same horse, but what a profile he built for himself leading up to that. I don't think he wasn't favourite in the Florida Derby, was he? Kieran
Well, it
McLaughlin
depends
was.
on who else was in there. He was I mean, he was basically even money. Let's see. I don't, I mean, I guess there could have been like some Todd Pletcher freak that was like odds on. 2016.
I think it was
Florida.
Kieran McLaughlin's. It was a Tappet horse, I want to say.
Oh, Mohaman.
Yes, wasn't he favorite?
You
Or
know,
not?
you might be right. Let's see here. Pulling it up. It makes sense that they might have bet Mohaman. Where's the chart at? Of course, I'm not going to find the damn chart here. It's the hardest thing.
Again, going back to, he might have been just a little bit underrated going in, because I don't think he was.
Yeah, well, I bet people see Mohaman, which, well, of course, I'm going to have the hardest word to possibly spell. Okay, let's see. Mohaman on that day was, I'm pretty sure you're right. Now that I think about it, Mohaman on the Florida Derby. Yep, he was odds on. He was 6-5. I mean, he was 4-5.
Yeah. So again,
Wow.
people thought shipping him from California, and but he won.
Yeah, but
Mohaman
was undefeated too. He had won the Fountain of Youth. He had won the Holy Bull. So I can see how they can make that
100%. Yeah, and you're going into somebody's home track where we were shipping in.
Yeah.
But no, it was a fun horse to be around Nyquist, and again, the Redhams made it enjoyable as well. They accommodated to the whole staff, and it makes it easier when you work for owners like the Redhams that they allow the staff to enjoy it as well as they do. And the success and the brand that they've built, the Redham stable, it's pretty incredible as well between the Doug and the Redhams. They've had a lot of success together.
Oh, absolutely. I actually bet a Redham horse the other day. Today's Flavor, the one they sent to George Weaver. I like that horse.
Oh yeah, that's a New York bred, isn't it?
Yeah. Jack, before I want to talk a little bit about some of the horses that you've had on your own as well. But before we get there, the TVG internship thing. At what point? Where did that happen in the run of things?
That was kind of in between the whole Todd and summer school and through Jill Byrne. I don't know if Gary was doing a little bit with TVG, but because I knew Pat Byrne, who was married at the time to Jill, she was working for TVG, and I just wanted to gain as much experience as possible and meet as many people as possible. And Tony Elevado at the time was the head of TVG, and I actually saw Tony the other night, and we laughed about quite a few things. And Tony put me in some positions to embarrass me, which he probably still does today. But we look back and laugh, and it was a fun little stint. And even like going to the production truck and seeing all this stuff happening, TVs and buttons, and it's like flying like airplanes. All these guys trying to produce a TV show. I'm like, God, that's one thing I do not want to do. I learned quick what I didn't want to do, and that was a TV production guy. Like, that's too complicated for me. So the TVG stint was fun during the time of briefly during Louisville.
I watched it the other day in the highlight of it, and I died laughing that you asked Baffert, something about you finally brought some horses over here that can win.
I know. So Tony would literally hand me these set of questions right before the person I was going to interview, and he wouldn't tell me who I was going to interview either. So me just being young, didn't have a clue really. The American side of racing that, I knew who Bob Baffert was. Did I know how successful he was? Absolutely not, until I went to the barn and saw the list of horses and races that he's won. I'm like, oh, this guy must be pretty good. And I think the first question was something like, how do you dye your hair? Or what do you do to make your hair look like that? I'm like, God, Tony, I can't ask this. And he's like, you better ask this. Like, you can see the microphone just shake. And it was fun. Just something humorous that Tony, wanted to try. And I'd go around Louisville and people say, oh, that the 10-pound apprentice. It was fun little stint that he did.
True Timber, which is a fun one we've had some fun with on the show, because it's Kendrick has that little piece about his favorite race, and And when he won, I didn't know that he had never won a grade one. I didn't know that was his first. I just thought, I didn't think he had a lot of grade ones. I didn't know that it was his first. Talk a little bit about True Timber.
Well, he came to my barn after Kieran retired in such good shape that I was more so nervous not to get in True Timber's way. He was a horse that trained himself, and Connor Quish was an Irish guy that used to work for that galloped him every day. That the horse never missed a beat, and you read about the success that Kieran McLaughlin had. There was some sort of, I don't know really how to explain it, Jonathan, that there was a lot of nerves built into getting True Timber because owned by Calumet, coming from such a successful trainer, I could only mess it up. So I'm sitting at night, how do I not mess this up? And I just said, you know what, just don't get in True Timber's way, and we let True Timber train himself. And, you know, he'd had somewhat success in the Cigar Mile from previous years, wasn't able to win it, but we kind of mapped out, you know, if we can get him to the Cigar Mile in good shape, he could potentially win it, and it all kind of worked out. We prepped him at Keeneland in the, I forget what, it was a 7/8 race.
Lafayette.
Either Lafayette, yeah. And he second or third in that race? I can't really remember.
Second beating the length.
Yeah, and Jose Lescano rode him that day, and he wanted to ride him in the Cigar Mile, but I think he had one of the favourites for Kelly Breen or something that he couldn't take off. And that horse ended up not running, but I was looking at the form. I said, well, Kendrick has gotten along great with True Timber. You know, let's put Kendrick on. I'd never met Kendrick before. You know, if Kendrick walked up to me at the time and said, hey, I'm Kendrick, I wouldn't have had a clue who he was. So, Jonathan, I don't tell jockeys what to do because I'm not a jockey. I'll only mess it up. These jockeys come out there and they have a plan in mind, and I want them to feel comfortable with their plan. And it was during COVID, so excuse me, I couldn't make it up, and I was at Gulfstream. We had a horse run in one of the Claim and Crown races, and we were just second or third to Jesus's team, that good horse. And I thought, you know, if we were good second or third, and I went to the Yard House, you know, the restaurant outside the paddock. I was like, wow, if I'm going to get in traffic, stuck in traffic, driving back to Palm Meadows, I was starving at the time. I hadn't ate all day. I said, let me go to the Yard House and get some food, and I'll kind of be that time I can watch the Cigar Mile and jump in the car and drive back. So ordered some food, and I was like, oh, let me text Kendrick's agent at the time for Kendrick's number and just wish him good luck. I never talked to him. I don't know what was I supposed to say to him. Yeah. He knew the horse. And say, hey, Kendrick, this is Jack Sisterson. Thanks for riding True Timber. Good luck. He already texted me back. He texted me back. I got you, bro, with a peace sign emoji and a crocodile. And I'm like, what? I didn't know what to take of it. What do I text back? A crocodile back? What's a crocodile? I didn't have a clue. And I'm like, speechless, like, what is this for peace sign crocodile? I was like, well, he's got me at least. And sure enough, he won. And I was sitting at the Yard House, and I can't remember what I was eating, but that ended up on the floor. And we had Bon Razon run as well, and he didn't run quite well, but seconds later, I get a FaceTime. It's Kendrick. And he FaceTime. I'd never met him before. And he FaceTimed me with the peace sign up, he said, "I got you, bro." I was like, "Kendrick, I love you." And to this day, every time I see him, early in the morning, if he's breezing one at Oklahoma and going by, he puts a peace sign up and says, "I got you, bro." That's a little funny story. That just goes to show you that, how good these jockeys are. He knew exactly how to ride through timber. And if I would have texted him, "Hey, Kendrick, brake, take back," or "Hey, brake, do this, do that," I'd only have messed it up. So I left the peace sign and the crocodile emoji to do their own thing, and they got it done. I didn't know that it was his first grade one either. So it was quite sentimental for him. And unfortunately, I couldn't make the trip up, but I was, had a bit of fun in the yard house celebrating watching the win.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so funny. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about too. The peace sign and the alligator.
I know. I was like, "What is that now? It's a peace sign I could get, but an alligator on the end." So kind of girls like, "Oh, he's from Louisiana. That makes a bit of sense now."
Vexatious. I mean, you weren't a huge price, but it was a huge upset. I mean, I don't think anyone thought Vexatious was going to beat Midnight Bisou that day. Were you optimistic or surprised?
We were optimistic because it's probably, Jonathan, the best horse I've trained on my own. She was such a fast horse that could carry speed over distance of ground. We probably, when I got her obviously off knee, she came in great shape, and she was going that mile and a quarter, maybe a mile and a half on the grass, and we breezed her one day on the dirt, and she went 47 and change. The rider sitting against her the whole way, which would lead to tell you she could have gone a lot quicker on the dirt. She galloped out. Usually those grass horses, they can travel over a half a mile in the dirt. Once you ask them to quicken, they kind of fall apart. She hit the wire running, and we could not pull her up. And I remember asking the farm, "Hey, I know this horse, she ran well, several years ago on the dirt. She ran in the Oaks, blah, blah, blah. But can I try on the dirt again?" And the farm, obviously, they like dirt horses and said, "Absolutely." So we looked at a dirt race, and she was training so well. Marco Dwyer at the time was galloping, and she could be tough to gallop. She'd have to go straight. You couldn't back her up. She'd have to go straight off with her. And we looked at the summer colony for horses that I think hadn't won a graded stake, or I forget the condition of the race. And this is perfect. She was training well. We thought we could, if she translated her morning work to the afternoon, we thought she could run very well. Fast forward to the afternoon, we're turning for home. I thought, "Oh God, finally, I've done something right. I've put a filly in the dirt that can win." I thought it was a matter of how far she was going to win by, only to be run down by Blue Prize that went on to win the distaff that year for Ignacio. And looking back, well, she ran well in the dirt. Let's kind of try and map out a dirt campaign the following year. I think we sent her to Oaklawn for an allowance race to start a career. And Latruska, let me look at, I want to say there's a couple of older mares in that allowance race that went on to be more than an allowance type of horse.
Right.
But we were just getting that as a stepping stone to potentially bigger and better things. And when she was second to Moneymore Girl in the Ruffian at Belmont, we thought, she ran well. I think she ran maybe it's 100 something buyer. It was a career top buyer for her. It was coming back in 3 weeks, which typically we wouldn't do, but the Purcell Ensign was coming back in 3 weeks. We shipped her up to Saratoga, and that's a filly that would turn literally inside out once she got to Saratoga. She'd dapple out, she'd eat. She was at the front of her soul. She was a happy filly. And we were optimistic going into the Purcell Ensign that she'd run well, potentially hit the board in a grade one to enhance her value as a broodmare for the farm. And turning for home, it probably when Midnight Zoo loomed up and engaged with her, she was such a hardy filly. It's a bit like Lexitoni. When you headed her, she'd fight, and if Santana would have probably went on by and opened up 2 or 3 lengths, she probably wouldn't have had a shot. But when he engaged her, that's when I thought, you know what? I don't think she's going to pass it, because that's how she trained. When somebody latched onto her, there was no passing her. So we were optimistic going into the race. At the top of the stretch, when Midnight Pursuit kind of engaged, we were, put it this way, we were more optimistic that she was going to hit the board and possibly and then more than. But what a sweat that there was an inquiry after the race. And I was like,
Mm.
oh no, surely not. And the longer it goes on, you typically, what happens. And I said to the guys, if we come down, how cool would it be to finish second in a grade one at Saratoga? And we all kind of smiled to ourselves, so that would be pretty cool. And then the inquiry time went down and we won, and that was even cooler.
That was almost it was I mean, it was a great day. I'm still, no matter what, but it was almost a really good day. Lexitonian ran second across the country at Del Mar in the Bing Crosby, and then eventually Lexitonian came back and won a grade one here in the Vanderbilt at 34-1 for you.
Yeah, he was scheduled to run the Vanderbilt the week before Vexatious ran, but was scratching the gate. And he was ready to run a good race. Would he have beat, I think, Volatile that year? Probably not. But he was training so well that, he kind of sat down in the gate. You know how the rules are, that they do what's best for the horse. So they scratched him at the gate. I panicked. We had the vet go back to the barn. He was 100% sound. We got the okay to breeze him the following morning at Saratoga, and with no race in mind, Jonathan. It's like, what are we going to? I called Andrew Burns in the racing office of stakes. Is there anything at Saratoga that we can run in? Sorry, Jack, there's nothing. I'm like, oh, I called the farm, there's nothing. But there is a race at Saratoga, Del Mar a week later, the Bing Crosby. Like, how's he supposed to? He just shipped up to Saratoga. He just worked. He was scratched. We had to ship him back down to Keene, and the morning after he breezed, he literally spent 10 minutes in his stall. We put him on a van across the road to the airport, flew to Del Mar, all within a 48-hour time period. And he ran a really credible race in the Bing Crosby just to get Vida, probably ahead. And you look forward the next year and he comes back and wins the Vanderbilt. So he was a cool little horse to be around. A little inconsistent, but on his day, he could compete with the best of them.
Where do you think that inconsistency came from? Was it a mind thing? What do you think where do you think the inconsistency came?
Yeah, he was a horse that if he kind of broke, and he didn't kind of break in the Bing Crosby. I think if he broke running and he was put in the race like the Vanderbilt when Jose rode him down the rail and engaged him early, he would fight. And if you look at most of his, career wins, the rider's aggressive out the gate with him and he responds to it. He's a horse that, doesn't really travel and on the bridle, but he would give you 110%. And if he didn't really break, he kind of lose a bit of interest. He when he won a listed race at Laurel, and he beat Mind Control, that was a big heavy favorite that day. I think he was a grade one of Mind Control at the time, coming out some good grade one horses, but he was engaged the whole way down on the rail, and he should be backing out of those situations, but he went forward in those situations. So he really thrived off pressure Lexitonian, and I think we're getting pretty good reports from Lane's End. Potentially his foals are, pretty precocious and fast looking. So it'd be cool to get a couple of those to train in the near future.
Jack, what's kind of next for you? What do you see the next year? Are you gonna spend some more time in New York? Are you gonna kind of be more of a Kentucky guy? Is there some California in your future? Some Florida? Where do you see kind of the next year? What's your schedule looking like?
Definitely Florida for the winter. I think the horses kind of winter well down there. We'll probably hang around Saratoga until probably middle of October-ish. and we let the horses decide where they want to run after that. You know, if there's one or two want to go down to Kentucky, we'll send them down. But this is our first year been in Saratoga for a longer period of time, and I cannot say enough good things about Saratoga and bar the expensive New York, but that's what you gotta offset to put the horses in such a happy place that they really have thrived coming up here to New York, and you know, we'll spend as much time up here as possible and gradually make our way down south towards the end of the year.
How many do you have in training right now?
We've 21 at the moment. You know, we look to pick up a couple of more as we go down for the winter, and we're always looking, you know, at the European results and trying to buy some European horses to bring over to run on the grass. So, you know, we've a great little barn at the moment. You know, we're always looking to add more, but at the same time, I'm happy with the number we're at the moment to be successful.
Do you find a lot of, I mean, because it sounds like obviously you are looking to buy kind of ready-made horses. So I would imagine that part of your job or your focus is like almost on being an agent to a certain extent as well. Getting things done and getting deals done, and then you skip the step of trying to assign them to a trainer. You get to train them yourself.
100%, yeah, and you know, thankfully we've owners behind us that would support us if we find a nice European horse that they will buy them. But it's constantly, you know, looking at results and watching replays and surrounding yourself again. That I don't do most of that work. You know, Alex Elliott, a good friend of mine back in England, you know, he lives there and he's lived in America, so he knows the type of horse that works well for America. We've bought a horse off Justin Cassie. I'm friendly with Joseph O'Brien. That as you grow and try and build relationships, you you surround yourself again with people that can help your career, and those guys have helped me try and scout out the horses that have done well here, and we've had a couple of Europeans that have come over and done well, and I think we've got a couple more yet to run at Saratoga. We've got a couple next week that will run first time in the country that I think they'll run well, and look for bigger and better things than just allowance races after they run at Saratoga.
And, and like, look, I mean, don't give away the story here, but like in a simple couple of sentences, like what do you feel like when you look at a European horse? What are some of the kind of base attributes that you look for that you think, okay, this is a horse that can handle American racing?
The two things, they've got to have speed and got to have a good mind. You know, it's probably more so they have to have a good mind because it's such a different style of training here in America. You sort of training in yards in the countryside back home, and it's a lot more of a laid back atmosphere where, it's a lot quicker environment here. So mentally you have to be able to withstand the fast pace of the training style, and to go with that, you have to have speed. And if you don't have speed, you see those longer type of distance races back in Europe that they go so slow. There's mile and a half types, and the big galloping tracks, and those type of horses tend to not work out in America. So we typically look for those 7 furlong to milers that have speed, that jump, they travel. Because you come to America, you break and you're gone. You have to get positioned, and those tight turns, and you don't want to break and be 20 lengths less. So those are the two things: a good mind, and you have to have speed.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought about the mind thing. If someone asked me, like some random person asked me, what would I think? I would athleticism. But to handle the turns, because there's so much more straight running over there. But that's being around in the morning and seeing these, it can be hectic. It's as calm as it is here at Saratoga. It can still be hectic. There's golf carts running around. There's people everywhere. There's barns here. There's barns there. There's horses crossing each other. It is a little bit more hectic.
And even so, Jonathan, before the race as well, that you go from the receiving barn, walk through all those picnic tables where all those fans having so much fun, and it's loud, and if you don't have a good mind to be able to withstand all of that, you've ran your race before the race.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like a professional athlete, you know, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you run out in front of 100,000 people and you crumble under pressure, your tendency is you're probably going to play a bad game.
Jack, I'm sure you never crumbled under the pressure out there on the pitch.
That's the reason why I'm not a professional athlete. I crumbled all the time.
Who's your club? Who do you root for?
I'm diehard Sunderland, which a lot of people might not have heard. They used to be in the Premier League years ago, and we got relegated. And we're trying to make our way back up, but do we see in the foreseeable future? Potentially, but they've got too many players that crumble under pressure. Let's put it that way. They don't have the mind for it.
So how does that work? If you're a Sunderland fan, like how do you root for anyone in the Premier League, or do you kind of like have to hate everyone else?
How does it work as a Sunderland fan? We cry a lot because we lose a lot. No, we're big rivals of Newcastle United, so we just root for Newcastle United to get beat. Anyone else can win but Newcastle. And you know, it's funny, my younger brother, 10 years younger, he loves coming to America. He works for Newcastle United. So for him to, you know, he's quite friendly with the players and things like that. He's in the marketing department. And, you know, when he has to go and watch the games, he'll text me, you know, it's the middle of training hours. He's like, hopefully we don't win. And blah, but he's, you can't be saying that. That's, you know, your bread and butter there. He's like, I know, but we can't have these winning. So, and he's so, yeah, as a Sunderland fan, we root for Newcastle to get beat in the Premier League, and anyone else can win.
That's funny, Jack. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you probably got some sales stuff to clean up and some horses to train and all kinds of other stuff. So I'll let you get back to it. But I appreciate you taking the time. It was a lot of fun.
No, likewise. It was really cool chatting with you.
All right, we'll talk soon.
See you, Jonathan. Take care.
I mean, I got to say that the one thing that stands out the most is peace sign alligator text from Kendrick, which is funny. I didn't know he was going to tell that story. I didn't know that story, but I can also look through my phone and see some messages from Kendrick, and they are peace sign alligator. Hilarious. It's so much fun to see Kendrick in that piece we run on Fox Sports with him getting his first grade 1 win and how excited he was. And it's one of my favorite parts of this game is there's so much, and I don't want to say disappointment in a bad way, but there is, you're going to lose more than you win in racing. It's just inevitable, but it makes the wins that much more special. A ton of fun catching up with Jack. I had no idea that he was a collegiate soccer player until today. And the West Side Rental story, I mean, that cracks me up. I thought maybe he got hooked up with Doug O'Neill. I had no idea that it was good advertising by Mark Verge and the team out at West Side Rentals. They helped him find a place and a career. I want to thank Qatar Racing, Sheikh Fahad, and their support. Ever so mischievous. Congratulations to that winner. And looking forward to seeing what else they unveil here at Saratoga. They own you almost had me in partnership with our friends at Black Type Thoroughbreds and Swinbank Stables. She had her comeback race at Ellis. She didn't break particularly well. She ran on well. And I think even leading into that race, the expectation was she might need a race that kind of run back into form. So looking forward to seeing her next start as well. Make sure you follow, comment, retweet, share. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money feed on wherever you get your podcast, as well as the JK+1 feed. And we will appreciate you for doing so. And until next week, we've got 3 weeks left of Saratoga. So we better get on our horse, try to get some more people on here. If you have any suggestions or ideas, people you want to hear, make sure you tweet at UT Big Hair. I want to thank everyone at In the Money Media, Drew, Spencer had his 200th show on Redboard Rewind, which is not easy to say. So congratulations to him, Maggie, Acacia, Billy, Michelle, Matty Ice, and the rest of the folks at In the Money Media. Thanks to PTF. And thanks to you for listening and supporting. We'll see you next week.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.